Good evening, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your third and final video blog of the night for Sunday, April 5th, 2015, around 7:06 p.m., Billerica, Massachusetts. Sun's going down. A very, very chilly Easter today. Hope you had a great Easter dinner, finishing up, taking a walk and stuff. I had a good Easter brunch, and I had a couple of sweets and stuff, but I'm all set for the night. And some news to report. The San Diego Padres made a major trade. They acquired outfielder Melvin Upton Jr. and closer Craig Kimball from the Atlanta Braves. And the Padres are all going out. They probably could win the NL West Division title, while the Braves are in for a major rebuilding process. I think the Braves could be challenging the Phillies for the worst record in the National League this year. And that's about it on the news. My third and final video blog subject of my personality profile. Tonight's personality profile starts a five-part series of famous athletes from Minnesota. The first one I'm going to talk about is the legendary wrestler and promoter, WCW and WWE Hall of Famer Verne Gagne. Verne Gagne was one of the biggest names in professional wrestling of all time. He was a great wrestler. He owned the AWA for many, many years. Verne was born in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, and he actually grew up on a farm in Conan, Minnesota. He left home at a very young age, at 14 years old, and he went to Robbinsdale High School. He played football and baseball and wrestled a lot. He won a state championship for wrestling in Minnesota when he was in high school, and he was all-state football team. He was a great football player as well when he played baseball. Then he went to the University of Minnesota, and he also played football and wrestled, and he was a Big Ten wrestling champion, and he was a good football player. He actually left school for a while to join the U.S. Marine Corps during World War II, but he only served for a year, then he came back to finish his studies. Then he was drafted by the Chicago Bears for playing football in 1947, but the owner, George Halas, discouraged Verne from doing wrestling because he didn't want that to be a distraction. But back then, NFL players made very few big-time money, so they had to take a second job. Verne didn't like that, and then he quit football and then went into the world of professional wrestling. There was rumors he was going to try out for the 1948 Olympic team, U.S. Olympic team, because he was such a great amateur wrestler, but he didn't because he wanted to do professional wrestling. He started a family then, and his son Greg was born in 1948, and he had like other children. I think he has maybe 4 or 5 daughters. I don't know for sure. He was trained for a professional wrestling career by Tony Stetcher and Joe Panagola, and Verne made his pro wrestling debut in 1949, wrestling in the Midwest Territories affiliated with the NWA. He won the NWA Junior Championship in 1950, and in the mid-50s he won several regional titles, including the U.S. title in the Midwest Territory, Chicago Territory, and was one of the biggest wrestling names in the 1950s. He was featured a lot on Dumont Wrestling from Chicago, and he was making over $100,000 a year, which was very big money for a professional wrestler. Also $100,000, usually the big athletes in baseball were making them, like Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, and a few others. So Verne Gagne was right up there making money, big time money, and he saved a lot of it. And for many years, Verne was rumored to be in line to be a future NWA World Champion, but politics played a part in him not getting the title, because there were so many regional NWA territories. They wanted to push their own guy in a major territory for their championship to hold the NWA championship, because it was a traveling championship back then, and he was voted down many times. And the last straw was 1960 in Minnesota. Verne was supposed to wrestle like the NWA World Champion Pat O'Connell, but Pat O'Connell didn't show up. Got him pissed, and then Verne Gagne decided he had so much money, he got like a promoter, Wally Carbo, and they formed the AWA Minneapolis, and it went through the Midwest, and Verne was the promoter, the owner, and he was also its first AWA World Champion, and he put the belt on him because he knew he was never going to leave that promotion. And for the next several years, Verne was the top guy in AWA as the World Champion. He held an AWA World Championship 9 times. He feuded with such wrestlers as Dr. Bill Miller, Gene Kiniski, Fritz Braun, Eric the Crusher, Ray the Crippler Stevens, Mad Dog Vachon, Larry the Axe Henny, and Nick Bockwinkel. Verne was one of the most popular faces of all time. He was famous for the sleeper. It was the Gagne sleeper hole. Once Verne Gagne got the sleeper hole put on, it was lights out no matter who you were. And stuff like that. Also, Verne Gagne was a wrestling trainer. He trained many great professional wrestlers, future professional wrestlers, at a camp he held on one of his farms in Minnesota. And several big-time wrestlers came through that camp, including Ken Patera, Jim Brunzell, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Ric Flair, his son Greg Gagne, Sergeant Slaughter, Playboy Buddy Rose, Brad Wagons. The list goes on and on and on. It was an awesome training facility. Also, Verne Gagne was featured in the 1973 movie The Wrestler, which was pretty good and stuff like that. And Verne was wrestling and promoting as well with the AWA. He made a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars on it. And he finally retired from the Squared Circle in 1981 after winning the AWA World title one more time in 1980. He also, before he retired, formed a tag team with Mad Dog Vachon, and they won the AWA World Tag Team titles, beating Adrian Adonis and Jesse the Body Ventura, the East-West Connection, for a little while in 1980, but East-West Connection regained it by a Phantom title change. Then Verne focused his duties on the AWA, and he, did not change with the times, because the AWA, he believed that all professional wrestling could have a great amateur background, and he believed one-on-one stuff. That wrestling worked for many years up to the early 1980s, but eventually sports entertainment took over, like Vince McMahon's WWF and other regional territories like Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and others. Verne Gagne had Hulk Hogan as under contract for AWA, but he a couple of times was going to give him the belt, but for the last minute he reneged on it because he wanted a piece of his contract from Japan, but Hogan refused it, and Hogan left the AWA for Vince McMahon's WWF. AWA just faded off. Many years decline. Verne still believed he wanted the AWA to succeed, but it never returned to its past glories in the 60s and 70s and early 80s. Verne sometimes appeared as commentator on AWA matches for ESPN and their syndicated programs. He made one last appearance in the ring at Wrestle Rock 86 against Sheik Adnan Al-Khalsi. He put the dreaded Gagne sleeper hold on him and beat him, which was pretty good. And he also tried to rap, which was very, very funny and stuff like that. But by 1990, the AWA went out of business because of they were bankrupt, and Verne lost his place to leverage the funding of the AWA with a piece of property he owned on his lakefront farm, but that was taken away by them at domain by the state of Minnesota, and they turned that into a state park. After Verne Gagne retired from promoting wrestling and stuff like that, he went into the WCW Hall of Fame, and then there was rumors in the late 90s he was going to revive the AWA, but that never came to fruition and stuff, and Verne Gagne retired and stuff. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006, but in recent years, Verne Gagne has Alzheimer's disease due to taking so many blows to the head and stuff with the concussions and stuff like that. He made headlines infamously in 2009 when he was in a adult daycare facility that he got into an argument with like a 97-year-old man and like beat him up, and a 97-year-old man passed away, but no charges were filed because both men were suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and it's not the best disease to have. Verne still is alive, but he's living with one of his daughters and stuff, and it's sad to see Alzheimer's disease. That's one of the worst diseases to have because it eats away at your brain. You get so forgetful and stuff like that. Puts a strain on a lot of families and stuff, and it's a sad way to go. Verne's son, Greg Gagne, wrestled, and his son-in-law Larry Zbyszko was the AWA World Champion. He was married to his daughter Kathy. I think he has another daughter, Donna, and somebody else. I don't know what her name. I think Beth, but I don't know for sure. And Verne Gagne probably is one of the most best top 10 wrestlers of all time, plus probably one of the most influential people in professional wrestling history as an owner and a trainer. He trained so many Hall of Fame wrestlers, Verne Gagne, and he's going to go down in history as a great trainer and a great wrestler and a great promoter into the 1980s. That's about it on Verne Gagne, and that's about it on these video blogs for the night. Be back tomorrow, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You're going to get 3 more of these. First video blog will be about my take on if the Celtics with the playoff push and stuff. I'm going to tell you about that. And then there's going to be the continuation of professional wrestling regional territories with Georgia Championship Wrestling. And the third and final video blog of the night, personal profile about George Mikan, famous Minneapolis Lakers center and a basketball Hall of Famer. Coming soon is more personal profiles. Will be about Minnesota athletes like Dino Cicilline, Harmon Killebrew, and Fran Tarkenton, and 5 great ones. Next will be the one with The Rock, and Wayne Gretzky, and Julie Button, and Heidi Pratt, and Bob Baca. And next week, previews of the NHL and NBA playoff previews. Good night. See you tomorrow.